The Crash Bandicoot series. Something that I never grew up with? Yeah. Besides having vague memories playing Crash 3 and CTR on the PlayStation 1, and a lot of Crash Tag Team Racing on the GameCube, Crash Bandicoot was a series that I don't pay too much attention to. I might know who the character is, but I just never gotten the chance to play most of his games. That is, when one day I decided to play Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy on Steam, as I was going through my backlog of games at the time. But after I casually finished through all 3 of the games and attempted the 100% each one of them, it started to click for me. From their tight controls, great level design, and some challenging gameplay, it has become one of my favorite games I played in recent memory, and I became a fan of the series ever since. From that point on, I explored other Crash Bandicoot games that I completely missed on, like CTR, which had become one of my favorite racing games, The Wrath of Cortex, Crash Nitro Kart, Twin Sanity, and more. However, one thing I was eagerly anticipating for since was Crash 4 to be released on Steam. When it finally did drop, I made sure to not only play through the whole game, but I also went ahead in 106% as well, as daunting as that was. Thankfully, all that was done around 60 hours. One of my favorite aspects of 100% in Crash 4, and throughout the whole series, mind you, are the time relics. These are collectibles you attain by completing the levels on certain time frames. While in this mode, these time crates appear throughout the level, which temporarily stop the active timer when you break them. Think of this as playing any time trial mode in any racing game where you try to beat your fastest time. And in my opinion, this is my favorite feature in all the Crash games. From their exhilarating gameplay of getting the fastest time, their pick up and go nature, and the complete test of your skills makes this my preferred way to play through these games, especially when going for those sweet, sweet platinum relics. And out of all the games that has a time trial mode, I find Crash 4 to be the best in my opinion for having some of the best movements out of all the games, with triple spins, slide spins, crazy jumps and techs, and many more. However, what also intrigued me about Crash 4's time trials is the series' first implementation of the purple relics. These relics go beyond platinum and are basically developer times, and these really put your skills to the ultimate test. By having you push all of Crash's moves to the extreme and really learn how to go through the levels as efficiently as possible. They don't count towards the completion for Crash 4, but they show how absolute of a monster you are in this game. And seeing how insane I am, I did it. All 38 of them. For me, this was such a crazy journey, and I would like to share you all about my experience. So in this video, I'll be going over all the purple relics in the game and ranking all from my least favorite all the way to the cream of the crop. However, there are a few criteria I have when making this list. Firstly, the fun factor of the level. How fun it was to go to the level. Was it exciting to go to it each time? Was there any frustrating moments that occurred?
That's some bullshit.
I find the beginning of the level to be one of the bigger factors of my enjoyment, since that is where you'll be spending your most time during your attempts. And a bad beginning can really ruin the enjoyment out of anyone. Secondly, how good was it to flow to the level? What I mean by that is, how much can you run to the level without being interrupted, while also being at a consistent pace? Was there any slowdowns or boring moments? Are there some waiting involved? Something like bad cycles can be examples of levels ruining your flow. Thirdly, how technical was the level? To put it simply, the more opportunities a level can allow you to do technical movements, and how consistent they are to pull off, the better the level is in my opinion. Something simple like corner cut can go a long way of ranking high in this video. Lastly, in terms of what's going to be in the list, I'll be going over not only all the main levels of the game, but also all the timeline levels as well, as I feel the side character portions are just unique enough to be included in the list. Of course, the Crash portion of the levels won't be discussed as much unless I really have something to say about them. I also won't be including flashback levels and boss battles since, well, they don't really have any time relics, of course.
No shit.
So with that out of the way, let's start this ranking by going over the worst level in this entire game. Cock block. Oops, sorry. I mean rock blocked. This damn level. Before I continue on, let me talk about the side characters real quick. In general, I find it to be fine, but they're nowhere near as good as Crash or Coco's section due to their limited movement they offer. I also find that all three of them suffer from weird little quirks that somewhat impede my enjoyment with them. From Tana's grapples being hard to aim manually, to Dingo Dall's general slow movement and inconsistent TNT firing with his vacuum gun, and Cortex lacks a reticle from his ray gun, making things awkward to aim with. Now that I think about it, all the characters are lacking an aiming reticle. That seems to be the core issue with them. Anyways, in the case of this level, this has to be one of the worst levels Dingo Dall has to offer. But before I go into the negatives, let me point out some of the positives that this level has, shall we? I like the reward towards the end of Dingo Dall's section, where having the Aku Aku mask can let you phase through those TNTs and save some time, and not having to go around them. That's cool. And the baby dinosaurs staring at you throughout the levels are cute. Yeah, that's all I have. This level fucking sucks. Firstly, Dingo Dall's section feels incredibly long and tedious to run through. It just consists of long hallways, occasionally having to chuck TNT to blow up the walls or hover over platforms and dinosaurs. When it comes to the technical aspect, there's almost nothing in there. You can't even do simple shortcuts like cutting to corners because they either have invisible walls or just straight up break the camera. Like, what the hell is this? These gas bubbles towards the second half of Dingo Dall's section is also really annoying. You'll never see consistent results with these cycles, so you either have to wait for them or have to take damage in order to go through. Which doesn't sound too bad. I mean, that's the purpose of those masks, right? But you'll need to keep them to not only get past that little shortcut I mentioned before, but to also get past those TNTs and Nitros before it. Maybe that's not important in the grand scheme of things, but still, in terms of the Crash portion of the level, it's similar to the original, but coming right after the Dingo Dall section can be excruciating at times, because I would be spending a lot of time on Dingo Dall's section, repeatedly dying over and over again, and when I would finally get out of this hellhole, it wouldn't take long before I instantly die from a simple mistake, and I have to do it all over again. God! Fuck this level! This has to be the worst stage Crash 4 has to offer, both in terms of doing the time relics and going through the level casually. Let's just move on before I torture myself even more.
This episode is when the
Dingo Dall
torture porn started to become a regular staple in
Crash Bandicoot series.
Fossil Field. From Dingo Dall's worst level, next comes Cortex's worst level. This time, it's a level all about himself. I'm sure you're all curious as to why I rank this higher than Rock Block. Well, for one thing, I find the 2D section in the level to be really good. The first one being the Molten Lava section. I find this section to have full of opportunities for you to bounce on crates, transform enemies into bouncy platforms, and dash your way using your trusty boots, to which I find to be my favorite part about Cortex moveset, and why I find him to be a very technical character. The other 2D section, where you navigate through these mushrooms and stuff, I also find pretty good. Fun dashes and movement throughout. However, these few moments don't really save for how frustrating this level is overall, mostly stemming from how clunky Cortex controls. Like Cortex ray gun being difficult to aim at enemies in boxes due to his lack of reticle or auto aim. This is really apparent in the 3D section of the level, where aiming for those bugs to be turned to platforms is very awkward to do. I find it's just best to wait until the enemies are in my line of sight so I can shoot them, which cuts down the flow since there's a lot of stop and go involved. I would also occasionally find Cortex to have weird collision issues when against slopes. Like this example here, where I was trying to cut to that corner, but for some reason, Cortex wants to slide around as if he's surfing in CSGO.
So lately, I've been watching just
I also find Cortex generally slow jump and fall speed to make things feel really clunky when climbing on steps or platforms. All of these factors combined make Cortex not a very enjoyable character to play when going for those relics, and this level really shows the worst of him, which is a shame really. Thankfully, some levels do show just how fun he can be, but this is just not one of them unfortunately. Rush Hour. This level is unique in that both sections involve side characters, Dillo Dallying and Tana. But man, the biggest problem I had with this level is how long and drawn out it feels to play. Especially when both Dillo Dallying and Tana have parts which adds on to this feeling of dread. For Dillo Dallying, his slow movement and his gameplay of running through hallways and hovering from platform to platform, there's just nothing interesting going on with them. Hell, I find the very moment you start the level to be problematic, with this robot getting in your way of you chucking that TNT you took from it. Like, bro, move out of the way! Besides that, however, there are admittedly some neat texts and movements you can do in this section, like trying to hop on these moving vehicles that are coming towards you to increase your speed. While it is simple, I find it's fun to do. There might be some other moment which activates my neurons a little bit. It still doesn't say for how slow and a drag Dillo Dallying's portion is. Which reminds me, the second half of the level involves Tana. For the most part, her on foot sections are pretty good, with some generally great movements throughout, from hopping onto later pads to skip some time wall jumping, to just how good she feels to play. But what also bogs her section down as well are two things. First off, these long grind rail sections. I will explain more about my opinions of Crash 4's rail grinding in a later entry, but for now, I would say that these sections offer very little of what's going on, and in terms of variety. All that occurs is you jumping over electrifying pantographs and graphing onto these time boxes for some extra time, like I'm playing Guitar Hero or something. The worst part about this is that there are 4 of these grind rails. Also, I hope you remember to jump before you grapple in this part, otherwise you'll have a bad time. I know how I feel. Secondly, those damn rush hours. I know that's part of the name of this level,
Except for not starring Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan.
but man, there's so much shit going on. It is sometimes hard to comprehend what your next move is going to be, especially if you're doing time trials where you don't have much time to think. While the first rush hour isn't so bad, it's the second one which grinds my gears.
You know what really grinds my gears? Crash Bandicoot 4, it's about time's rush hour level.
This second rush hour is even more chaotic and appeared toward the end of the level, which wouldn't be so bad if it didn't took 5 minutes to get there. Yes, 5 minutes. And seeing that this rush hour part is towards the end, you are most likely to fuck something up, and one wrong move would send you straight back to the beginning with Dillo Dallying again? Where did I heard that before? While this level might be better because you're not fighting with Cortex controls, it's still terrible anyway to get the purple route because of its boring and something frustrating level design. Building bridges. So this level starts with a Tana section, where you go on your merry way, and then there's already a problem. That rope at the beginning is super inconsistent. I swear, either the rope lands perfectly and you can run into it, or it's 5,000 feet away and you have to awkwardly jump for it and potentially miss that time box.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Besides that, however, everything is smooth sailing from there. That is, until you reach to your third rope section, where it not only has the inconsistency issue like before, but also those TNT boxes next to it. Trying to break those boxes with either methods is annoying. Kicking these crates might sometimes blow the TNTs up, and grappling onto them can be awkward to precisely aim. But then we get to those electric panels. My god, if you think the inconsistent rope swings were bad, then these are much worse. All of these panels revolves you having to be at a certain cycle, and getting a bad one can lead you to so much weight to be had trying to be in sync with the cycle. Either that, or you try to brute force your way through these electric panels and pray you don't die. But after going through that inconsistent mess, you're then plopped into Crash's portion of the level, and Crash's is a short run before going a ride with Polar.
Hi.
I mean, it's fine and all, but it's really nothing to write home about, and not worth the hassle to go through a Tana's section. Overall, the big issue lies in Tana's section and how inconsistent the cycles are on every single run. It is not a great level to run through for that purple relic. At least it feels short? The Great Escape. There's a lot to say about this level. For being a Cortex/Crash focused level, I feel there's very little in terms of Crash's portion, as it just consists of you jumping from cargo to cargoes as they fall off from the plane. Admittedly, it has a nice challenge to it, as it can be a bit tricky and very precise to hop through these cargoes, but there's not really much to say about it other than that, besides how satisfying it is to do this early slide and land straight to the goal, leading to some huge time saves. Because of this, I find this to be a mostly Cortex focused level, and how do I feel about it? Kinda mixed on that one. On the one hand, some of the sections in this level are genuinely great, like the part where you're dashing to these crumbling bridges while blasting time boxes along the way. I find to be really fun and exhilarating to navigate. I also like some of the moments where you're constantly dashing through long hallways, which might sound hypocritical for me to say because I don't enjoy when Dingo Dial's level does it, but the difference is that Cortex boost ability negates any sense of slowdown that might be felt when going to these hallways. Plus, it's just fun to blast your way like although, this hotel section makes you learn how to preserve your dashes and to avoid these incoming carts. On the other hand, there are plenty of issues with this level, which I feel lessen my enjoyment. Some of the issues I have are pretty minor, like this crusher right here, causing you to stop momentarily because you have a bad cycle. Or Cortex projectiles being too big to where it can sometimes disappear from thin air. Thankfully, developers are kind enough to leave this perfectly convenient TNT crate to blow yourself up. The only other semi-minor gripe I have with this level is the ending bridge, which has these falling trucks coming from above.
What a fucking Bandicoot!
I often find they seem to appear at random, and I would sometimes take unnecessary damage from it, which can be frustrating at times. However, these don't compare to the biggest issue I have with this level, which is that tall vertical 2D section towards the end. This section sucks.
Horrible.
Firstly, trying to outmaneuver this robot with that TNT is almost impossible, and I find it's better to just wait for it to explode. Secondly, these 3 slow moving conveyors that take forever to get moving. These what I find to be such a flow killer, as you're just standing here doing nothing. Lastly, these platforming sections with all these moving enemies, there's so many things going on in that section that I find to be very awkward and inconsistent to navigate through, especially when trying to create bouncing platforms out of them. All of these issues combined, especially with that last 2D section, is to be a level that, while feels short, takes so many attempts to run through as Cortex before I even get a chance to run through Crash's portion of the level, which is incredibly short and doesn't show Crash's true technical capabilities. Overall, it has some potential to be great, with some fun movements throughout, but has some flaws which undermine my enjoyment for achieving that purple relic, and ends up being frustrating in the end. Run It Bayou. We have finally made it to our first Crash focused level.
I am Crash Bandicoot!
Which unfortunately means that this is the worst one in the list. Yay! The reason why is because, while it has some good moments here and there, it is overall a very uninteresting level to run through. But first, some positives. The main highlight for this level is the vehicle section. The vehicle section involving the jetboard, which I find to be really fun to control, especially when you can increase your speed by boosting. The excitement of the Jetboard can be first found right at the beginning, where you navigate through these water-filled alleyways, dodging whirlpools and naval mines. I find this to be very thrilling and very consistent if you know what you're doing. Like right here, if you decide to not go for that time box at the bottom, you'll be able to catch up with the cycle coming ahead and save a lot of time from waiting you'll have if you decide to get it instead. The Jetboard section at the end is also fun, where you go through the water stream at blistering speed as you blast your way through these time crates. And I mean, it is a lot more fun than having to slow down to a crawl as you try to collect all these boxes in a normal run. However, notice that all my praises only covers some of the Jetboard sections. As per everything else, I find it not to be that interesting in my opinion. The on foot section, right after the first Jetboard, it's alright, but there's nothing much you can really do to improve your times there, because you will always be catching up with the rope that's coming up, which is thankfully very consistent. I also find the second Jetboard section to be a tad dull, due to the water stream rushing towards you, slowing you down. And then there's the boat section. You cannot tell me and say that this part is remotely interesting at all. All you're doing is sitting in this auto-scroller waiting for that damn boat to move. No amount of breaking time boxes away from that boat can make this section go any faster. While it might be important to do that at the beginning to break those TNT boxes that will block the boat, going ahead afterwards doesn't really matter at all. You'll be waiting for the boat to come back anyways due to that wall blocking your progress. All is this to say, you'll be finishing that boat ride at roughly the same time, whether you stay on that boat or not. Overall, while this level has some highlights along with the Jetboard section, everything else about it is just not that interesting, which is something I'll take any day compared to the previous levels on this list, which are just straight up frustrating. Truck Stop. Truck Stop is a Tana timeline level that, while it's not bad, it's not too interesting compared to the others. But unfortunately, the beginning area of the level leaves a lot to be desired. Firstly, why can I do this wall jump skip right here? For some reason, trying to do this trick puts you straight to the sand pit, killing you. Secondly, trying to hit those 3 time boxes while there's a TNT at the bottom is a bit awkward to the Tana's weird kick hitbox. But besides these minor gripes, the rest of Tana's section is pretty fine. It has some nice text you can do throughout, like a couple of wall jumps that you can do. I also like some of the early grapples you can make by making a leap of faith towards the sand pits and be prompted to get out of here.
I'm out of here.
Pretty nice. But outside of these few moments, the level is overall pretty standard when compared to the others in the list. It just consists of doing some running and jumping. Nothing else to say really. And I would say it's all worth it to reach the crashes section, but just like building bridges, it puts you straight to an auto runner section with the Atlas Spear. And while it's fine, and actually a bit more challenging than the original due to the extra nitro boxes scattered around, you're pretty much missing out on the on foot section of Crash's stage, which is really good. Trust me, we'll get to there way later. Overall, Truck Stop is a fun level with some neat tricks here and there, but it's nothing to really write home about. The only other thing I have to say is that, man, that purple relic times is very tight. Takes me a couple of tries before I even get it.
Oh my goodness!
Hook, line, sinkers! Arrgh! Sorry, this is a pure Tana focused level. And what do I think about this one? I find it's alright too. Compared to Truck Stop, this is a purely on foot Tana level that has some great, consistent flow to it. You are always on the move, whether you're running, jumping, kicking, or grappling, with some occasional ground pounds and waiting on platform lifts, which are little pace breakers, but it's pretty minor. This is often your first introduction to wall jumping, which is good enough as it is, but the fact that you can actually skip them almost entirely by jumping onto later wall pads makes them even more fun. And thankfully, there are plenty of opportunities to do this technique, like the few that are found at the beginning, and especially the one toward the end, which is so good, that entirely breaks the AI of the enemies that are coming right after, which I find to be funny. There's also this trick you can make which skips this moving platform entirely, where previously you'll have to normally wait for. But outside of these skips and precise movements, there's nothing much to say about this level. I'll even go as far and say it feels very linear, and there's not a whole lot of major tricks or skips that could be done to further improve your time, unlike say Crash or Coco's level. So it's only a matter of being proficient with your movements in this level. So in short, while this level doesn't have any issues when attempting to get the purple relic, it also doesn't have anything that it really excels at, making this one of the levels of all time. Home cooking. We went from a pure Tana level to a pure Dingo Dial level, and while I find this level to be fine as well, it has a few points that makes it better than the previous entry, Hook, Line, Sinkers. Arrgh!
Please don't replay that.
Firstly, it doesn't feel as linear as Hook, Line, Sinkers, as there's actual depth to its level design, with many parkour-esque movements that Dingo Dial can benefit from, like trying to jump onto and off of these poles to get huge air times, and doing box jumping to either get into better positioning or to do corner cuts. All of this combined makes navigating pretty interesting. However, outside of these neat movements and shortcuts, you're still left with a pretty standard level. Because of Dingo Dial's limited movement, the level design still consists of you running through hallways, occasionally whacking some enemies or boxes, and doing some standard jumps. There are also some invisible walls in this level, which I find is unnecessary and limits your freedom to do even more shortcuts. Like this one right here. There's a great opening to hover over this gap, but I can't do that because of that invisible wall that's put in place. But one thing that I cannot shake over about this level is how horrifying it is. Yes, you hear me right. There are some serious creepy shit going on. Like, I would sometimes see enemies that were once there, now gone. All that's left is figments carrying around these TNTs like it's floating or shit. This shows that the remnant which was once there will now turn to ghosts. Spine-chilling stuff. Jokes aside, home cooking is pretty good. It's a simple level that allows for some great shortcuts and parkour movements, which all can be utilized to shave off some extra time. It's actually one of the easier levels to get purple relic on due to Dingo Dial's simple controls and level design, and some people manage to get it purple on their first try. I can't contest to that, however. So yeah, a fun, simple level. Booty Call. Wait a minute, I'm sure some of you are surprised to see Booty Call this low in my ranking. Well, let me explain. But first, the goods. I find the second half of the stage to be great overall, as there are a lot of opportunities to do slide spins and other technical movements. I also like the situation that goes on toward the end, where there are loads of moving platforms, which, again, is hypocritical for me to say because I hate it when Crate Escape does it, but you're not doing it with Cortex clunky controls anyways, so shut it! Well, it is hard to get through it at first. It's still pretty satisfying in the end, when you actually get past through it unscathed. Although that box sweep at the beginning is super satisfying. I don't know why though, it just does. The only nitpick I have with the second half are these flame boxes and spinning enemies that I find to be annoying to get past through without taking damage. And I would also nitpick about waiting for this moving platform, but I learned that you can skip this section by jumping over that plank on the left. So yeah, you might notice that I said the second half of the level is pretty good. What about the first half? I mean, sure, the beginning is fine, except for that bridge gap. Like, what the f is that? So what could possibly be so bad about this? Oh, yeah. Let's talk about rail grinding, shall we? In general, I find the game mechanic of rail grinding to be immensely fun, with games like Tony Hawk or Sonic games showcasing how thrilling it is to grind through the stream of rails at high speed, and among other things like hopping over one rail to another and being all suspended high in the air. which is why I find Final Rush in Sonic Adventure 2 to be one of my favorite levels in the game, as you are grinding through these yellow glowing rails in freaking space, all the while going over these rings like whoop, 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 whoop. However, in Crash 4, the main problem I have with its implementation of the rail grinding is that while there are things to do, like jumping, hang off of rails, and swinging left and right, the speed at which you go through these sections is always fixed, meaning that there is no way to actually speed it up at all, especially when you can't do crazy momentum stuff like SA2. Plus, there's no way of actually hopping out of these rails early, so it really limits your freedom on what you can do on these sections, and it just amounts to being an auto-scroller. As for Booty Call specifically, the single rail section that it has is really long. It roughly takes around 46 seconds of rail grinding before you're on foot again. It might not sound so bad on a casual playthrough, but when you are doing time trials, where many attempts are expected from you, you'll be playing through this part over and over and over again. It gets pretty repetitive. It makes me wish that I can actually jump out of this freaking railing and be on foot again. This one section single-handedly ruins this level and why it's low on this list, as if you remove rail grinding, it's not bad at all. So yeah, expect me to complain a lot about rail grinding in a couple of entries. Seeing Double. This is a Cortex timeline level, and in terms of the positives, the main course of this level revolves around this long 2D section, which tests your ability to make careful positioning and precise jumps, all the while making some sick ass boosts. But what I love about this stage is the high risk, high reward moments that it brings to the table. If you manage to save up 2 Aku Aku masks along the way, and manage to boost through this laser barrier in the tight window they disappear, you'll have just enough iframes to get 2 time boxes instead of 1. Getting past through this laser barrier without taking damage is very hard to do. I don't always succeed.
You gotta be fucking.
But man, is it satisfying once I do. This one moment for Seeing Double is enough of a reason to place it this high in my ranking. It's something that I've never seen done in any other level before. That sounds good and all, but sadly, the main issue with this level is that you'll still be dealing with Cortex janky controls, which there are plenty of. Such as the beginning, where trying to bounce on the TNTs can sometimes backfire and kill your run immediately.
Come on, man, it's not funny anymore.
Or trying to shoot enemies and boxes while bouncing on platforms, which is always awkward to do and not fun at all. And lastly, shooting these boxes that are inside tight corridors can sometimes lead to your shots hitting the walls, wasting precious time just trying to correct it. Long story short, Cortex level has a mixture of some real highs, like having a tightly crafted level design, but also has some mixture of lows, like Cortex awkward and janky controls. And while Crash's section is just as great as the original, I'd rather play the level that it came from than actually playing from Seeing Double. And trust me, I would. Later in this list. So yeah, not a bad Cortex level. No Dillo Dallying. What's that? A timeline level which outranks the original? That's crazy! In this case, no Dillo Dallying over Run It Bayou. But why is that? Well, remember in Run It Bayou, everything about this level was not pretty exciting, except for the jetboard section. Well, in No Dillo Dallying, these boring moments are replaced with something a bit more exciting. In this case, Dingo Dash. Yes, this huge hunk of thing has level design that is more exciting than Crash's actual level, and that really says something. The best example I can explain why is through the beginning. Sure, you can choose to stand on that boat the whole way through, or you can tell that boat, "Hello son, I'll be right back, I'm gonna go buy some milk," and fully abandon it to jump to as many platforms as your heart desires, collecting time boxes along the way. You can even use these crates at the end to completely hover over that wall of nitros instead of blasting through it normally, which is so awesome. The rest of Dingo Dall's section is also good, relying on you carrying those TNTs to blow nitros up, blocking your path, along with having some fun movements overall. Good stuff. Be warned though, seeing that both this and home cooking is located in the same dimension, Mosquito Marsh, expect to see some paranormal shit going on with this level as well. Like, what the fuck is this? Get away from me! leave! Ah! However, I do have some few complaints with this level. Firstly, while Dingo Dall's vacuum is utilized well, it can sometimes feel a bit wonky at times, as your TNT chucks can sometimes miss due to the auto aim working against you. Secondly, since this is a timeline level based on Run It Bayou, my opinion of Crash's section hasn't really changed at all. The boat section is still just as boring as it's always been, but the Jetboard section is still pretty good. So it's a mixture of good and bad. All of these pros and cons makes it appropriate to have no Dillo Dallying land right here in my rankings, where it has a good first half, but a mixed bag of a second half. Jetboard Jetty. Oh boy, this level. I'll just go ahead and say that Jetboard Jetty has the worst beginning I have ever seen in this entire game. First off, this is one of the few levels that you have to wait before starting the timer. Why? Because of that damn flame box! I swear to God, sometimes the cycle will be in your favor and you can pick up Aku Aku immediately, but other times you'll have to wait for that flame to extinguish so you don't either waste your mask or fucking die. And while it's great that the mask will save you from that flame box, you would really need to consider saving it for the section I'll get to later. But in any case, even if you manage to get to that initial spawn, you still have to deal with other bullshit, like the ropes which are inconsistent as all hell, spike bars which have cycles that will ruin your day, and that part with the enemy near those TNTs, well, say goodbye to that mask, as you're guaranteed to lose it to this bullshit. Also, there are ghosts lurking in this level as well, but it's not even Mosquito Marsh. Oh fuck! Man, it's such a shame to see how terrible the beginning is, because the rest of Jetboard Jetty is actually pretty good. The numerous times where you traverse with the jetboard, wow, a jetboard? Who would have known? It's pretty nice. Speeding through rivers while avoiding obstacles like whirlpool, naval mines, and cannonballs is actually pretty fun, and difficult at times, so you'll need to get good at dodging in order to leave these sections unscathed. There are also numerous times where you'll be navigating through these moving conveyors, and while it might look like a boring auto-scroller, it's actually not, as not only there are plenty of obstacles to keep you on your toes, but it can almost be skipped entirely by jumping through these spikes and whatnot, which is where these masks come into play. Remember that I said to save those at the beginning? Well, this is why. You'll need that invincibility to efficiently go through these sections unharmed, and allows for some shortcuts that are normally impossible without them. Which makes it even more unfortunate when you realize that everything in the beginning is out to get you, taking away your triple mask privilege, from the flame box, to spike bars, and enemies with short, telegraphic attacks. One other highlight I would like to mention is the bridge section.
Shit. Here we go again.
Where you use Lanny Lolly to phase in platforms, along with extra goodies like time boxes and masks. I'll explain more about my thoughts on Lanny in a later entry, so for now, I'll say his section is pretty good. So in conclusion, while Jetboard Jetty has the worst start I have ever seen in a video game, it also has some fun and well thought out level design as well. Thank fuck I don't have to deal with Louise at the end, as she is skipped entirely in time trials. But if she would have appeared, this level would have been far lower on my list. Shipping error. Shipping error. What more can I say about it? It's a Cortex timeline level that's actually pretty good for the most part. I like the level design found at the beginning, which takes full advantage of his dash ability to speed through tight corridors, while also making some precise jumps, especially when it's all through bottomless pits. Also, shout out to that crate in the beginning, where they bounce you at just enough height to let you boost at the highest steps. Satisfying stuff. Anyways, the middle portion of the level is also great, where you first blast your way to enemies and boxes, Rambo style, followed by dashing to these moving platforms coming from sideways. You'll need to adapt and anticipate when they'll appear, since it's not always consistent, making it quite tricky to navigate at times. But then we get to the long vertical section. If you don't know what you're doing, or have bad luck with the cycles, this section is pretty awful.
Total fucking garbage!
Trying to turn these moving UFOs into bouncing platforms can, of course, be very awkward. Even more so when you're bouncing yourself. In such rare cases, you can even get sniped by these gas mocking scorchers when you ascend your way up, which can be infuriating at times.
Bloody hell, you're awful.
However, when everything does line up together, and you can get to these parts on your first or second try, it's actually very satisfying. And I swear, I can almost put these in a montage or something. The crash portion after Cortex is also just as good as the original. But again, I would rather play the level that it came from than have to go through the side characters portion first. But thankfully, that timeline portion is actually pretty good. So yeah, a good level in hindsight, but an exceptional one when you get a god run going. Toxic Tunnel. So originally, I have this level placed far lower on the list, like rank 34. Yes, right where freaking Crate Escape is. But after coming back to this level, once I learned how it's meant to be played, it's not as bad as I thought it was, and I have a bit of appreciation for it. But before I discuss my character arc, let's talk about some of the generally good stuff that it offers. Toxic Tunnel is a crash focus level that is open to a lot of technical movements throughout. Whether it's triple spinning throughout moving carts and spinning cylinders, making fast movements to these gears, or doing some wall running, which some can be skipped over. It sounds easy enough, but this is Toxic Tunnels we're talking about. It's one of the few harder levels to obtain the purple relic due to the sheer difficulty of its level design and its ungenerous times. In fact, my fastest time I beating for this level is only 1 second over the dev time, so you cannot fuck up in this level. But I don't know. The combination of its hard difficulty, while also having great level design that allows for some crazy text, makes this pretty engaging in my opinion. My only gripes with Toxic Tunnels, right before we get to its biggest issue, involves hitting enemies to make them land on those TNTs. It's very inconsistent, as for whatever reason, they often spin away from them instead, leading to these time boxes being missed completely.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
So let's talk about the biggest issue I have, and the major gimmick of the level, those damn spinning gears. These were the reasons why I used to hate Toxic Tunnels. From their weird design and their unorthodox movement, leads to many awkward moments to occur, and it's hard to figure out how to even navigate those damn things. And while their first appearance isn't so bad, as they're easy to spot their pattern, including this neat shortcut that I discovered toward the end, which saved a bit of time. It's the one throughout the lava section where I had issues with, as I couldn't figure out how to properly traverse to its weird patterns, especially when ascending vertically, leading to so much time being wasted. But when I decided that one day to observe how others navigate to these sections for their purple relics and tried to apply it to my runs, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Soon enough, I was getting comfortable going to these spinning gears just fine. Now looking back, I'm starting to grow fond for this stage. It's not something to look forward coming back to, especially when going for a full completion run, but I can appreciate for what it's out to be. A long, challenging level that puts your skills to the test. Blast to the Past. So I find this level to be pretty fine, but it has some slow moments that really bogs this down. And to put the issue right off the bat, these grind rails, they are so freaking boring. I swear to God. The combination of its long length, the minimal challenge it offers, and an extremely forgettable music makes this a chore to go through. It's like I'm going through a lobotomy with how boring this is. And it's near the beginning, so it gets pretty repetitive real fast. However, outside of rail grinding, Blast to the Past, it's actually pretty good. The volcano section, after the first grind rail, being the biggest highlight, as it's very fun to blast your way through. With the combination of high speed movement and careful slide spins, you can make this into a montage for how impressive it looks. Also, you can impress your friends and showcasing how much of a speedrunning god you are. Jokes aside, what makes this section even better is when you have triple mask, as it allows you to not only run through this section without taking damage from the lava, but you can easily go to the vine section without any harm. Which reminds me, Kapuna exists in this level. Yeah, to briefly explain, she is essentially a quantum mask that allows the ability to slow everything down, which can be useful in this level if you don't have triple mask, as you can slow down the vines to safely pass through these platforms. But she's situational outside of that because you have triple mask, so she may not be as useful as I hoped she would. Not a great first impression so far, but she'll be better represented in later entries. Trust me, she can get really fun. The only other thing I'll say is that, wow, as I was recording this, I've just found out that there's a time box hidden behind that plant, which actually gives me better time than I usually get. Those bastards! Other than that, yeah, Blast to the Past is generally alright, but it's bogged down by these boring grind rail sequences, which makes it a level that feels like it drags on, despite being technically short. At least compared to Booty Call, the on foot section are a lot more interesting, which is why Blast to the Past is pretty high in the ranking, despite both of them having similar flaws. Speaking of which, a real grind. It's really weird to put this and Blast to the Past side by side, as they're pretty similar in some ways, both suffering from the same issue of having long grind rail sequences. At least this one is superior, not only because it has better level design, but the way it better utilizes a quantum mask, which in this case is Lanny Lolly. As I explained before in Jetboard Jetty, Lanny's main gimmick is phasing the environment in and out of existence. My overall opinions about him is that he might not be as technically complex in terms of movements like Ika Ika or Akano, but the mental gymnastics required to navigate to this section can be unreal. Holy shit! Having to coordinate between quickly moving around with triple spins while also shifting objects blocking your path or whatever it is to collect, it can be pretty difficult at times, and it's something too much for my dumb little brain to handle. Yet, when you practice enough and get used to its level design, it becomes second nature. And thankfully, the beginning of a real grind really demonstrates his abilities well, by having to shift things constantly to collect time boxes, run on platforms, or passing through walls. Doing all of this can be some crazy and exhilarating stuff, but the other parts in the level are not bad either. Highlight being toward the end, where you continue to use Lanny to make even more crazy maneuvers. However, there are a few issues I have with this level, which slows this down a little. First off, during the first 2D section, there are these sharks that jump out of the sand pits. These always interrupt your flow, as you have to wait for their cycle to end. You can technically use your Aku Aku mask to damage through them, but you might need to keep that, as a triple mask might be useful to clear this 3D section with the drum barrels and passing by the row of time boxes efficiently, so you're kind of forced to wait for the sharks to cycle through. The other issue I have, like I mentioned at the beginning, are these grind rails. The first one being so boring. I swear to God, I'm always falling asleep when I'm in this section. But unlike Blast to the Past, the second grind rail is a bit more interesting, as getting these 3 time crates while also dodging that TNT is very precise. I like that for some reason. It keeps you on your toes, you know? Still doesn't say for how boring the rest is though. In short, A real grind still suffers from most of the stage being either really boring or really slow, but it's at least fortunate enough to have great utilization of landing, along with having some great on-foot moments as well. But despite being the superior one, it's still sad to see it this low in my ranking, but it is what it is. Thar he blows! Sorry, I can't help myself. Wow, another surprising entry. A timeline level that beats out the original, and it features Dillo Dallying of all characters. Quite funny, isn't it? But what makes this the best Dillo Dallying level in the game is that it essentially solves the issue that I usually had with his levels. See, what I didn't like about them is that they're often slow and really overstays their welcome, which ends up dragging the levels down, with Rock Block and Rush Tower being the more infamous examples. The only two levels that don't feel this way is Home Cooking, where it's pretty good, but its simple level design means it doesn't stand out as much compared to other stages. And no Dillo Dallying, which has a great Dillo Dallying section, but a boring Crash section, which bogs us down overall. But in Thar He Blows, almost everything about this level is actually great. Not only does it have the shortest Dillo Dallying section, which prevents it from overstaying its welcome, but are just jam-packed with things to do. You'll be making constant jumps from platforms, including some bit of corner cuts, bouncing onto TNTs or nitro boxes to make even higher jumps, and some interaction with the environment like blowing up the gates using TNTs. All of this makes it so there's never a dull moment with Dillo Dallying section. The only gripe I have is that trying to use TNTs to blow up the gates can be a bit finicky.
Well, that was idiotic. Off to myself. Off and left.
Especially with the last one, as you can't simply grab a TNT and chuck it off screen. For one, there's an enemy near that gate.
Idiots! We've all got swords!
Even then, the gates can't be opened off screen like that.
You gotta be
So you'll need to damage boost yourself to open that gate up. Which also means that Aku Aku is required for this part, otherwise this trick won't work. Which reminds me, the one other benefit that makes Thar He Blows better than Booty Calls is that in Crash's section, you don't have to deal with fucking rail grinding. Yeah, all that is skipping this level. You're simply left with a generally good second half of Booty Call, with some minor differences, like those two crates that you can hop across without touching the platform, in addition to those moving platforms that have TNTs on them, which, yeah, these really suck. Who the hell put that there? Also, why is the time trial ghost always ahead of me when I'm in the second half? Stupid ghost, you make me look bad. Oh wow, I'm surprised to see how well this level is ranked, but I think it deserves that pride. Not only does it include a great Dillo Dallying section, but it also has a great Crash section that's mostly intact and skips the worst aspects of the original, making this the more enjoyable level to get that purple relic.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Oh man, I can already feel things are starting to get good with these levels, with this one being so close of being really good, but not quite there. However, I got a hunch that the next entry will be the official start of the ascending greatness. Draggin On. So guys, we did it! We have finally ascended to Great Level Haven. Levels that surpass any amount of enjoyment for attaining these purple relics. We went from levels that were straight up garbage to ones that leave very little impressions, and those that are simply good. But now, we are getting to some amazing stuff. Yeah, this early on. The first one in the list, Draggin On. So what makes this level great, you may ask? Well, let's put this out of the way. Akano, the best quantum mask to ever exist in this game. And I don't think I'm alone with this one either. For those who don't know, Akano's ability is transforming Crash into a death tornado, which lets you glide from platform to platform or soar to the sky as you make precise aerial movements. You are impervious to any form of enemy damage, which includes knocking back projectiles. Casually, Akano can be fun to use, albeit a little slippery. But what makes him even better is by using this little known trick. See, when you transform to the Death Tornado while you are triple spinning, the speed from which you gain from these spins will carry over to Akano's transformation, which can lead to situations like this. Yeah, that's right, you'll be flying in such high speed, it's ridiculous. Holy shit, this is crazy. This trick is pretty hard to pull off, but once you master it, this form of movement alone not only makes getting purple relics way easier, as I don't think the devs intended to happen, but it also skyrockets the enjoyment factor, which makes any levels involving Akano rank pretty high in my rankings most of the time, with Draggin On being no exception. Although, this might be Akano's weakest appearance, as while the triple Akano trick is demonstrated pretty well in some parts, like the one towards his purse appearance, the narrow platforms found later in the level can feel a bit too precise to use this trick, which limits on how much you can soar using him, making it not as fun to pull off compared to other levels. But even outside of this trick, the level features some vertical movements, which Akano was not built for. It can feel pretty awkward and even janky at times, as you can sometimes bump into invisible ceilings, interrupting your flow and potentially killing you.
Until something sticks there, it might be. Is that it? Invisible ceiling? Is that how it ends?
But I still enjoy using Akano despite these flaws. Same goes with the rest of the level, like the beginning taking full advantage of you doing constant slide spins. I find this to be a great way to practice this type of movement. And while I take issues of narrow platforms involving Akano, going through them on foot is not that bad. You'll need to do plenty of precise platforming while avoiding dragons and gong ringers. Overall, Draggin On is a good level that has some great precise platforming, but it's the weakest level when it comes to using Akano, which is why it's in the lower part of the great level category, as it's not a bad level. Far from it. It's just that the best gimmick in the game is used far better in other levels. Potion Commotion. So about levels getting good, this doesn't apply to just Crash or Coco level, but also the timeline levels too, and this one is no exception. I simply like how much goes on in Tana's section. You'll be doing plenty of hops through lily pads while dodging mimics, ghosts, and dragons. In every attempt, I always enjoy going to her section because I can feel that making small adjustments can shave off extra time to my runs, like being more precise with my jumps or doing sharper turns. However, the one issue I have to bring up is something that I've never seen happen before. If you somehow run through the level too fast, sometimes the cycle can put you in such disadvantage that it can either stall some time or straight up kill you. Jeez, never seen a level punish you for being this good. The other minor issue I have is that damn wall jump oddity at the beginning. Thankfully, it doesn't put you straight to death, but instead an awkward spot. Sometimes. But setting these issues aside, after going to a few wall jumps and doing some grapples at the end, you are then greeted with Crash's portion of the level. And I don't think I need to explain to you why it's great. The clip alone demonstrates this. Though, to be fair, I would rather play Give It a Spin to get some fixture for some crazy Akano madness than having to play Potion Commotion. Mainly since I'll have to adjust the controls between side characters and Crash, which could be jarring to get used to sometimes. So I'm only really judging this level for Tana's portion, even if Crash's portion is a neat bonus. And for what it is, it's outstanding. It's the best Tana level for having some great level design that tests your agility skills, all the while giving you a burst of dopamine when you're ever so slightly improving your times. But don't be too good, otherwise you're gonna have a bad time. But besides that, a great level all around. Sanity Peak. The second level of the game. Funny going back to it, as when I went to record some footage for this video, I managed to beat my new record in my first attempt. Twice!
Huh?
This alone made me realize how easy this level is to get the purple relic, as the times given are pretty generous. Hell, I even encourage you to try this level out when getting started with purple relics. But why could that be? Besides being the second level of the game, I think it stems from how much you can slice spin this level, as certain areas can be very open in its level design, allowing you to chain those moves in long periods of time, especially during the chase sequence. Maybe this is a better map to practice slice spinning instead of Draggin On? The only issue I can say is the occasional bad rope cycles that can interrupt your flow. But I mean, if it's easy to get the purple relic, it doesn't really matter all that much, does it?
Why bother?
Maybe this is why I'm ranking it this low, as it's a great level with virtually no flaws,
Perfection.
but I feel as though other levels provide something much more than this. But I think it's still great nonetheless. Crash Compactor. So I have similar thoughts, just like in Sanity Peak, to where I find it's a great crash level, but I feel as though other levels provide something much more than this. But what makes this one better than the previous entry is that there's a lot more going on with this level design, and it's not as easy. For one thing, I find the beginning to be particularly interesting, as the flamethrower that is a few feet away from spawn has this cycle, which essentially tests if you can pass through it on your first try. Too slow, and you'll be burned to a crisp. For some odd, maniacal reasons, I like that. But other parts of Crash Compactor are great as well, with the usual perk of being able to use Crash's moveset to speed your way through the level, along with having some occasional neat skips here and there. I especially like towards the end, where it's a 2D section that utilizes Lanny to make some swift movement, provided you know how to navigate properly. Some of the minor gripes I have includes having a grind rail section, which I oh so enjoy. Thankfully it's pretty short. These gears having weird collision, making them easy to fall into. I mean, it is technically accurate to its design, but come on, really. Lastly, these buzzsaw ramblers, as they call, are pretty annoying to deal with, as their buzzsaws attack can insta-kill you if you hit them at the wrong spot at the wrong time. Like, come on man, that's not there, damn it.
Fatality.
Otherwise, Crash Compactor is still a blast to play, even if there's nothing too spectacular about it. It's similar to how I felt with okay timeline levels like Truck Stop or that one that shall not be named. But the difference between those levels and Crash Compactor is that you at least have Crash's advanced movement right off the bat, making the levels much more exciting by default. Shit happened. Whoops. Damn, sorry. They just stop with these innuendos. I swear to God, the ship happens. Speaking of timeline levels, here is the last and greatest one in the entire game. And it's somehow a Cortex level? You know, the worst one of all the side characters? But how could that come to be? That can't be possible. Well, my dear friend, the reason why it's this high in the ranking is because of Cortex section, which is just
Perfect!
I'm dead serious. The issues I have with previous Cortex level are either due to its janky controls or bad level design, but for Ship Happens, these problems simply don't exist. I rarely felt any awkwardness controlling Cortex, and at the same time, the level design complements his gameplay really well. Both qualities combined makes his section very thrilling and consistent to go through. So much so that it almost feels like muscle memory. While there might not be major highlights that stands out for this section, it's at least consistently enjoyable to speed through. I honestly have no complaint to say at all. In terms of Crash's section, well, it's just as great too, just like the original. Although, you are missing out on the ice physics at the beginning, which are just phenomenal. We'll get to that eventually. But, I don't know. Something about his section just doesn't vibe with me at all. Nothing changed with the level design, like I said, but it just doesn't feel as fun to go through. And it might be because of how time trial ghost works in this game. So, I don't know if my copy is busted or something, but in timeline levels, even when ghosts are disabled the options, they still show up in my runs.
So bitches.
Whenever I'm in Crash's portion. And in all honesty, I prefer if they don't appear in the first place, simply because they always mess up with my concentration whenever they're near me. What the fuck? It causes me to make more mistakes than I would like to admit. Ah, stupid ghost, I hate you! And I prefer to instead judge for myself for when I make any improvements or not. I'm weird, I know. I should have mentioned that weird quirk in previous entries, but I think this one really stands out for not being as fun, which is why I'm talking about it now. But looking back as shit happens, not only do I consider it to be the best Cortex level, but the best timeline level, period. Its level design complements the side character's movement really well, which alleviates any issues I generally have with them, which in this case is Cortex janky controls. With those issues gone, this level showcases Cortex's truest potential, which involves his boost ability and ray gun usage. Truly a peak timeline level. Rude Awakening. Ah, the level which started it all. For being the first one in the game, it's incredible how fun it is to do time trials. But one of the things I find great is how much it trains you to use Crash 4's advanced movement right off the bat. Having enough ground for you to learn how to triple spin, or eventually slide spin. A bit of a backstory. When I first unlocked the triple spin after beating the game, I immediately realized how painful it is to constantly mash the X button during time trials. My thumbs were already becoming really sore because of this, so playing ahead of time, I decided to rebind my X button to be the right trigger instead. Yeah, right trigger to spin. Weird, isn't it? But actually, rebinding it makes triple spins much less painful, and I actually come to prefer this control scheme. This also affects side characters too, like Cortex Ray Gun, Hana's Grapple, and Dingle Dog's Vacuum. So if you're wondering why I rarely get tired of triple spinning during gameplay, this is why. But getting back to Rude Awakening, actually I lied, sidetracking again. I really love the attention to detail added to the beginning, like the TV being just close enough for you to change channels on every run, the fridge would have these magnets spelling out crunch, and that floaty that looks like Spyro? Oh my man! Hello Spyro! How you doing?
I'm out of here.
I'm fabulous. Okay. Now getting back into the topic. Because of how Rude Awakening is laid out, in terms of being a starter course, the level design can be very open for some constant maneuvers like slide spinning, but it also doesn't shy away from allowing advanced techniques to be pulled off as well. One example being the end. Oh my god. Learning that you can ground slam at this spot to land the higher platform, it's so fucking cool. While all of this might sound like a cakewalk for being the first level and all, it's actually not. Firstly, some of the obstacles like these rolling stones can be tricky to dodge since they aren't always consistent. But with quick reactions, you can pass through them just fine.
Thank God.
But the second reason why it's difficult are the relic times. It's surprisingly tight to get the purple relic. Even platinum can be tough as well. What's that? You're telling me there's a tradition for Crash Bandicoot games to have difficult relic times on their very first stage? Some of the minor nitpicks I have for Rude Awakening includes that long grind rail section, which is bad enough as it is. But it's made even worse that there isn't much going on with it at all. But I might give it some slack, because it is technically the first level in the game. Still doesn't make it any better though. Speaking of it being the first level, because of that reason, outside of the few moments I mentioned, the level design can end up feeling a bit too basic and not overly crazy. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue, because Rude Awakening is a great learning stage to utilize Crash's advanced movement, while also having a pretty challenging purple relic to achieve as well. So it's a level that's easy to pick up, but difficult to master. This alone is what makes it better than Insanity Peak or other levels before it, as it has plenty of highlights for being a simple level. Although, this also means that the levels coming up will get even more crazier and exciting. Offbeat. Whew boy, this stage. Right off the bat, you can tell how beautiful and such an eye candy it is. Seriously, this has to be one of the most liveliest stages I've ever seen in this game. From the colorful theming of the Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans, to the lambastic festivity of a carnival, flowing with confettis, fireworks, and so on. There's even a parade going on as well, with floats representing various characters like Eruptor from Skylanders, Purah from the Crash series, Fake Crash is here as well, and Spyro? Again? Oh my god! So glad you're here again! Where's Spyro? Oh my god! Your last release was really good true. Spyro? Hey, where are you going? What also complements the colorful visuals is the music, and oh my. While the level's aesthetics is not usually part of the equation when ranking time trials, Offbeat is a rare exception where the whole beauty of it really elevates the enjoyment of speedrunning through it in my opinion, which justifies its high ranking,
14, Human Skin.
despite having a handful of issues which I'll get to later. But enough about the style, what about the substance? Well, don't worry about that, it has plenty of great moments as well, gameplay wise. For example, the beginning. You start the level by bouncing on these iron boxes, trying to find the most optimal way of climbing out of these dark alleyways. Following that are a row of enemies which, oddly enough, has a cycle which visibly corrects itself upon you being near them. It's really weird to witness, but I appreciate nonetheless. I also find the level's overall flow to be great. I swear, the way the level is structured was perfectly designed to navigate using your trusty triple spin. It never feels like you're either out of reach or too far ahead. In general, I find the gameplay moment to be outstanding. There are also moments where you use landing lolly, which is pretty alright. Nothing that really stands out, besides being able to shift out certain enemies and hazards. Emphasis on certain enemies. Anyways, while I might complain about there being grind rail sections, which are pretty long mind you, I'm actually okay with this one, mainly because it's toward the very end of the stage, so you'll rarely see it appear during your numerous attempts. But when you do get there, it could be a nice relief for trending to the level. It's especially rewarding when the goddamn music intensifies. Holy moly. While all of this sounds wonderful, unfortunately, it also has some legitimate issues that I would like to go over. Enough to where Offbeat can't go as high as many people would expect. So to go over the issues, first off, despite me praising on how the cycles were handled at the beginning, it doesn't mean that the rest of the level is like that. Most of the time, you'll get pretty terrible ones that screws you over. It could be some frustrating stuff. Speaking of frustrating, these goddamn ghosts, or at least as they're called, swing specters. Yeah, this was what I was alluding to a few minutes ago. And I'm telling you, they have to be some of the worst enemies in Crash 4. Right beside the Gas Moxie and Scorchers and the Buzzsaw Ramblers. I pretty much hate how their attack patterns aren't telegraphed at all, and they take forever to start firing again, which leads to you getting hit by them when you least expect it. I always hesitate a lot when passing through them, because they can be unpredictable as hell. Like fuck, dude. And then there are these man cannons. My god, they are such pace killers if I ever seen one. There are numerous of them, and often slow things down in an otherwise fast-paced level. Oh god, oh man! But they can sometimes be a nice mental break as well. So, I don't know. I still hate them. Yeesh. There's a lot to say about this level, but overall, Offbeat is still
Fantastic.
It has beautiful aesthetics, catchy music, and fun level design, making it very exciting to speed through. But it's also unfortunate enough to have not so beautiful cycles, annoying enemies, and having these slow man cannons. But don't get me wrong, I love going to this stage if I ever have the chance to. But I feel that the flaws it has are significant enough that I cannot rank it any higher than this. Bears repeating. The title is right. It's bear repeating to say that, yes, getting 100% of this level sucks. The polar section can just end me for how finicky getting those crates are. Even with the hitbox being patched, I feel for those who endured on launch, you poor souls. But in any case, speedrunning to this level is actually amazing. And one of the reasons why is because of how challenging it is to slide spin to the stage. Trying to position yourself to these weights or the crumbling platforms is very tight, especially the weighted ones. On a good day, these platforms can be fun to navigate through, but on a bad day, these things can be a living nightmare, as standing on these platforms for too long can interrupt your movement and end up killing you if you aren't too careful. It ends up making these sections not mindless at all, which I can appreciate. But outside of those, navigating to the rest of the level is still great. I especially like towards the end, where you can do this high jump on the weighted platform to skip having to wait for those chunks to drop down. Which sadly reminds me that Kapunawa continues to be underutilized in this game, as in this level, she's only used for like one thing, which is superficial in my opinion. I know I said she'll get better in later entries, but trust me bro, she won't get better after this. But enough of that, we got the polar section to talk about. Polar is essentially the vehicle section for the second half of the level, where you are constantly moving at a fixed speed, but you can press the boost button to go even faster. But unlike the jetboard, you only gain a short burst of speed, so you need to strategize your boost timing and find the most optimal spots to use them, especially when you have to look out for TNTs, nitro boxes, trees, and rocks. So boosting at the wrong time can get you screwed by these things. Did I mention that you'll need to collect time boxes as well? So yeah, getting good at this section is key in getting good relic times, and I kinda appreciate the challenge it offers, even if the controls can be a bit slippery, but I pretty much have no issues with it. Also, in comparison with its timeline counterpart, Building Bridges, Bears Repeating has a much better polar section, as it's more open and less awkward to navigate from these TNTs and nitro boxes. Sorry to bring you along, Building Bridges, but back to the bin you go! So to conclude this segment, I find Bears Repeating to be a fantastic level by having a great yet difficult level design that tests not only your slide spinning skills, but your driving skills as well. Driving skills? On polar? Why the fuck did I say that? Nothing more to say, really. Stay Frosty. Man, Stay Frosty is so much fun, and one of my favorite things about it is the ice physics. Ice physics in video games tend to get a bad rep due to their slippery controls, making them not fun and very awkward to navigate. However, Crash Bandicoot seems to be one of the few franchises where the ice physics manage to be actually fun. Not only does your speed increases when you slide into them, but you can start doing these slides in any directions, allowing you to do complete 180 turns and be in full control while you're on ice. And man, This shit is so much fun, and it has been this way all the way back in Crash 2, out here making ice physics fun since 1997. The tradition of fun ice physics is carried over in Crash 4, with the usual perk of being able to slide to gain some speed, of course. But unlike the previous games, you can actually combine it with your triple spin to gain even more speed. It can get pretty nuts. Thankfully, all of this is demonstrated fairly well in Stay Frosty, as it has plenty of icy surfaces to slide across. But putting all the ice physics aside, the level design as a whole is still spectacular. Some of the major highlight includes the beginning, which is actually pretty difficult. You'll need to be very meticulous and precise with your jumps, all the while maintaining your posture on ice so you cannot die from the frozen waters, the sharks, or those fishermen. It's hard, but it's not bullshit hard. Another highlight are the segments that utilizes Kapuna Wa, which are great. You're essentially slowing down time to navigate through these fallen ice or through the coursing river. It's even utilized during the only grind rail sequence in the level, where you'll need to time your slowdowns to pass through these crushers. In a way, it's rather unique, even if it's just a simple grind rail section. Pretty nice, I say. See? I told you Kapunawa would get better! Really? The only issue I have with Stay Frosty is the TNT that has 2 time boxes located after the beginning. While the ice physics can be cool, having to precisely break the time box without blowing yourself up while on ice can be annoying to deal with. I'm free. It leads to so many runs ending short because of this. But otherwise, this level is freaking wonderful. It has immensely fun level design, which is blessed for including ice physics, along with having some Kapuna Wa moments, which are handled nicely in my opinion. All around, a great level. Little complaints. Off balance. Thankfully, there's nothing off balance about this level at all, as it's pretty well rounded in my opinion, and it has a couple things that I enjoy about it, such as how it looks. The way the level is designed makes it feel like I'm on a racetrack, from the wall paths looking like directional arrows to the shortcuts which only benefit for speedrunning only. All of this adds up to make Off Balance an enjoyable time trial level rather than a traditional platforming stage that you come to know of. And all of these speedrunning details leads me to my second point, which is that Off Balance has plenty of tricks that could be pulled off to shave off some extra time. Like the slide jump you can make here, or some of the wall running skips there, including the one which is very hard to do, but it is completely worth it. In one way or another, this stage has a lot of tricks up its sleeves, making it very fun to experiment and discover on your own. But wait! How can I forget Akano, the third greatest thing about this stage? He's out here bringing some of the greatest hits, which includes pulling off this triple Akano trick right into the open area, the long 2D section, and the one toward the end. Yeesh, look at him go! These Akano moments makes them all the more exciting, yet dangerous at the same time, because there are tons of bottomless pits to watch out for, so keep that in mind. But unfortunately, despite all this high-octane movement and fast-paced level design, it makes some of the slower moments really egregious and stick out like a sore thumb. The first example being this moving platform. And trust me on this, don't even try to catch up with it. You will always be missing that platform no matter what, unless you have insane luck. The second drawn out moment occurs with this auto-scroller section. And look, I get it. It's fun being the platform, dodging obstacles with landing lolly, which, oh yeah, he exists, but it doesn't disguise the fact that you'll still be waiting around doing nothing. Something which can't be skipped entirely, unlike Jetboard Jetty. But outside of these slow moments, the level is still outstanding. It has fun level design that has a great sense of speed, while allowing for advanced techniques to shine, like performing some of the skips or using the triple econo trick. Whatever it may be, I enjoy what Off Balance has to offer when racing for the purple relic. Nitro Processing. We have finally reached to our top 10 greatest levels in Crash 4. These levels go even further with the enjoyment of getting these shiny purple relics. I would even call some of them masterpieces. And the first one in the top 10, Nitro Processing. A fantastic level that is notable for one thing, its difficulty. And holy shit, is it hard. It's essentially the endurance test to see how long you can run through this level without taking a single hit. And I'll get to why soon enough. But this level features a lot of bottomless pits, quick reaction based movements, and difficult enemies to face off, like these fireflies that are bursting electricity, these glowing goobers, and those rats with the spiky shields. This level is also home to really difficult level design, like the very beginning requiring some precise movement to these waterfalls, which is easy to fuck up, these rats near the spinning gears, which requires quick decision making, and that long hallway which contains even more enemies and bottomless pits. I find its difficulty to be very appropriate since it's the third final level in the game. But despite its brutal difficulty, I still find it very enjoyable regardless, thanks to its plenty of opportunities to perform some fun movements throughout. In addition to that, Nitro Processing also features two quantum masks, Ika Ika and Kapuna Wa. Hey, wait a minute, who the hell is Ika Ika? Well, he's the last quantum mask to be introduced in the game, of course. His main gimmick revolves around flipping gravity on the fly, allowing you to walk on the ceiling and do some upside down platforming. Keep in mind that you can only flip gravities up to 2 times before it stops working and you fall to your death, or fly to your death. Think of all this as similar to the switching gravity mechanic in Sonic Adventure 2's Crazy Gadget, except it doesn't control like ass. Now that we got the explanation out of the way, it's funny how I'm introducing him right now, as all the levels that has Ika Ika on it are pretty awesome, and Nitro Processing is no exception, as you use them to pass through tight spaces while also navigating through these rotating gears, with this part allowing you to get some serious air times. As for Kapuna Wa, you mainly use her to not only slow down these fast moving gears, but also the water stream. However, it gets interesting when you realize it's not always ideal to use her, as either going down the water stream or through certain gears can actually slow you down. What? Now I know it sounds bad, but hear me out. It actually makes all the more interesting, as you'll need to strategize when to not go slow motion in order to speed things up. Smart utilization of her can get you the most optimal times, which is really fucking cool in my opinion. But all this mask talk reminds me that this level also includes triple mask potential, which, yeah, it's pretty much mandatory. It makes the gauntlet portion way easier, and going to these spikes and enemies at the end is safer as well, allowing waterfalls to be used for a great burst of speed. But let me tell you something. Saving these masks is gosh dang hard, which brings me to one of my biggest gripe with this level, which is that some parts of the level can be pure bullshit and makes saving up these masks a total nightmare. There are plenty of inconsistencies with not only the cycles you'll be facing, but with the enemies' hitboxes as well, like those rats with the shields. I swear to God, I'm not touching this shit at all, yet it still hits me? It also makes some of the minor annoyances even more egregious because of how often they take away your mask. Like these guys, the obstacles with spikes and shit, and those goddamn flame box. Oh my god. You'll essentially need to be near flawless with all this until halfway through the stage for even getting a chance for a triple mask. And I know I've been praising this level for being difficult, but this is just too much, man. But regardless of all this bullshit, I still enjoyed this level a lot. I mean, it's in the top 10 for a reason, as its brutal difficulty really tests your skills on getting that shiny purple relic, along with having great level design, which requires some quick reflexes and your use of technical movements. And how can I forget its excellent use of the quantum mask? This level is seriously no joke, but I'm all for that kind of difficulty. Just don't force me to be flawless next time, please. Dino Dash. Man, it seems like whenever I start up this level, I'm always surprised on how good it ends up being. I would always assume beforehand that Dino Dash has a whatever chase sequence, and that's pretty much it. But no, open that bad boy up, and it's excellent. Just talking about the beginning alone requires so much thought process that I might have to explain step by step on why it's so fucking good. First, you use swift movement to triple spin up to these logs and slide spin towards various gaps. Then, you drift side to side as you avoid these acid bits coming from that Venus flytrap. And after climbing to these dinosaur heads, you precisely attack this flytrap at such an angle that it flings toward the 3-second time box at the top. Then, you dance around to this last flytrap so you can carefully collect that time crane that's on top of the TNT. And lastly, you swerve left and right a few more times as you collect more time boxes while using Lanny Lolly. Also, you just kabobby. You see what I mean? All this crazy shit in just the beginning. That's how fucking good Dino Dash is by that alone. But the rest of the level afterwards is no sleepover either. For example, the grind rail section. Similar to Stay Frosty, Dino Dash also spices things up by including Quantum Mask into the mix, which in this case is using Lanny Lolly to collect time boxes and clear obstacles.
Mushroom!
And look, it's not the most groundbreaking thing on earth, but it does keep you busy enough to not feel boring. Plus, it's pretty short at least. I also enjoy some of the traditional platforming sections that it offers as well, like the swamp section, which consists of bouncing on crates and whatnot, or the more enjoyable one, the lava section, where you'll be doing plenty of precise slide jumps, which are satisfying as hell. But now we get to those chase sequences. So, I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion or not, but I actually don't mind these sections at all. I enjoy the fact that you don't know what's coming ahead and have to memorize the precise location of all the gaps, TNTs, or enemies. I find it's great for keeping you engaged while also not sacrificing your speedrunning potential. And these sections get even easier once you have the triple mask, as you don't have to worry about the obstacles at all. Pretty ingenious, I say. So the one thing I'd like to note is that when comparing between Dino Dash and Rock Block, damn, remember that level? I find that Dino Dash is much better, as the box placement are nowhere near as awkward as in Rock Block, with such examples like the swamp section. Okay, I'll admit, I'm only bringing this up because I want to remind myself that Rock Block is still terrible. But now comparing the two made me realize that's even worse than I remember. I'm so glad my opinions haven't changed at all. Back in the dumpster you go! But what it really comes down to it as a whole is that besides the second grind rail being kinda meh, everything about Dino Dash is pure gold. The level design is pretty dense, as there are so many things going on in such a short notice, making some sections like the beginning or the lava section to flow really amazingly. This level really knows how to keep you engaged, and I highly recommend you check this level out. Crash Landed. What a beauty, both in regard to its gameplay and the visuals. I mean, look at it. Look how pretty this looks. Alright, I won't go too much into its presentation this time, as I already did enough of that with Offbeat. So let's just wrap up with this quickly. Crash Landed's vibrant visuals makes running to this level really enjoyable, and does somewhat affects the ranking that I place in it a little, even though I don't normally put graphics into consideration. However, the difference between this level and Offbeat is that the gameplay that it offers is so much better. So let's talk about it.
Let's just jump.
The biggest highlight for Crash Planet is the slippery pink goo. It's basically the same as sliding through ice in Stay Frosty, so going through these sections is just as exhilarating as the ice levels. But what makes them better is that some of the areas are pretty open, so you're free to slip and slide however you like. Another enjoyable aspect are the Ika sections. I find these parts to be both hectic and a blast to run through, especially when running to these boxes. Oh man. Crash Landed is also one of the few levels that does what I like to call triple mask chaining. What I mean by that is that once you attain your third mask and blast your way through the stage, there's another Aku Aku box waiting for you as the duration finishes, allowing you to extend your vulnerability immediately. This shit is so fucking cool, and it's a shame that very few levels even do something similar like that. Although, the only quirk about it is how picking up the mask while you're invincible will not reset the invulnerability times. It'll simply get ignored and pop in somewhere in the back rooms or something. It sucks that it doesn't extend the timer, but it is what it is. The last thing I'd like to talk about are the Schnurgle sections. Schnurgles? Is that what you call them? This cute little bugger is your vehicle section for the level, and I find it to be the best one in the game, for the most part. The mechanics and controls are similar to Polar, but the level design is a bit more complex due to having multiple routes and bottomless pits, making them trickier yet enjoyable at the same time. And with the combination of strategic movement and the use of time-saving tricks, occasionally seeing myself end this section with a new personal best, it's really something, man. But unfortunately, while the Schnurgle may be an adorable and exciting ride, he's not perfect. What? The physics can sometimes be a bit wonky, which can mess up with your movements a lot. And while his first appearance is great, the second appearance leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, the first half is fine, but when it starts introducing moving platforms, then it becomes a problem. As similar to Potion Commotion, when you get to this section too quickly, the platforms can sometimes be out of your reach, which ends up sending you into the gutter. But besides these minor gripes, Crash Landed is still a fantastic stage, with great level design, great visuals, and enough fun mechanics to place it really high into my ranking. Food Run. We have now crash landed into this level, located in the snack dimension. The same dimension, mind you, which has 2 stinker levels. So to see something like this is really jarring, and it's fucking amazing. And it's all because of its gimmick, which sees you using all 4 quantum masks in the single level. Yeah, they all make their appearance, and are greatly used in each of their sections, for the most part. So let's go through each one of them in order, shall we? Kapunawa, the first, but also the best mask in the level, as you use her to slow down these fast moving cars, while also making satisfying slide spins between each one. And I'll admit, this part can be quite tricky to do, especially without jumping, but man is this satisfying. Before I move on, I would like to give a shout out to the beginning, which have these rows of platform testing your slide spin ability. Also, shout out to the part with all the TNTs that are annoying to dodge. This part sucks. Ika. His section is pretty fun. You'll be shifting gravities to navigate through these series of buildings, all the while avoiding these TNT robots, which you might as well forget about them, as they rarely hit you. I also like how you can practically skip over these swinging ropes if you're skilled enough. This can save a bit of time, which is always good. The only issue I have with this part are the gaps, which I swear I always land on, every time. It screws me over more than it should. After going to some of the moving vehicles with wall running, you then meet Akano. So this part, I mean, it's Akano, goddammit. He's great. There's plenty of opportunity to do triple Akano tricks, which can use huge amount of speed. The only thing worth noting is how this is where you'll start to see your triple mask run if you have them far enough, which it's not that mandatory, but it's less worry about getting killed by these TNT robots. After that, we have Ika. Wait, Ika Ika again? Huh. Well, I guess he gets all the spotlight in the level, huh? Anyways, this part might be a bit tricky for some people, as the wall running can be finicky, especially when upside down. But the best trick I found is to forget wall running entirely and focus on reaching from one set of boxes to another using Ika Ika. You'll have just enough distance to reach through each one of them. Trust me. And lastly, we have Lanny Lolly. Unfortunately, I find Lanny Lolly to be the least interesting mask in Food Run, as you're just passing through some of the phase-shifted walls. That might surprise you a bit by having to shift certain platforms, nitro boxes, and the obstacles found in the traffic section, but it's nothing to really write home about compared to the rest of the Quantum Mask. And that's Food Run. God, what a great level. The fact that you're utilizing all 4 Quantum Masks is such an ingenious idea, and really shows how far these masks evolved, in addition to how you, as a player, use each one of them. It's such an amazing level to speedrun that I wouldn't be surprised if this is considered many people's favorite. Stowing Away. This may be a shocker for some that I even placed it very high. I mean, why, you may ask? This whole level is claustrophobic as hell. For Christ's sake, I could be having a serial of oops, all hallway design using this level if I wanted to. And I get it, I too would have hated to play a very linear level if I was playing a timeline level, but in a Crash or Coco level? Nah, this shit slaps.
Certified Bandicoot Classic.
What makes Stowing Away's tight and narrow level design work so well for speedrunning is that it all comes down to being quick and swift with your movements, rather than simply finding shortcuts. This style of gameplay can lead to this level flowing consistently well, especially in sections with these moving blocks and whatnot. I love running through this level each and every time. But you know what's the best part about Stowing Away? Is that it also includes 2 Quantum Masks, first being Ika Ika. He's great, no surprise there. Changing gravity to go through these tight vents is pretty fun. It makes me feel like I'm a spy infiltrating space. This section really adds to the overall swift movement to the level. But the biggest highlight would have to be the block maze. Basically, every switch you activate moves the blocks around, changing the level design completely. This means that in order to get good relic times, you'll need to memorize the entire layout for every switch you make, changing gravities preemptively as you essentially go around in circles and into the middle. In a time trial setting, this is very unique. Throughout the stage, you will also come across Akano as your second mask, and he's pretty good, don't get me wrong, but I feel that pulling up the triple Akano trick is a bit finicky due to the cramped nature of the level, but he's still not bad. So all this talk about narrow level design means that it's perfect, right? Well, not quite. The only issue I have with this level is that it can be quite restrictive in the experimental department, leading to the level feeling a bit samey in my opinion. But that doesn't really matter anyways, because at the end of the day, I still fucking love this stage. Stowing Away is not about finding shortcuts to get the fastest time, but rather is to test how quick you are with your movements. And I might talk shit to stages like Hook, Line, Sinkers or Home Cooking for that linearity, but it's mainly because these characters don't have such crazy movements like Crash does, which really does enhance the enjoyment of doing time trials. And this is mainly why I'm ranking this level really freaking high. Out for lunch. Okay, I'll admit, I might have some bit of bias towards space levels. I mean, seriously, I cannot stand to hate them. And as for this stage, yeah, you bet your ass I would adore it. But it's not just because of its theme. And trust me, I wish I can, but it's actually due to the gameplay being quite tremendous. And right off the bat, the one major praise I'll have to give is having a great beginning and a great end. They both involve these very long hallways, but what each of them offer are great in their own ways. For the beginning, you use Ika Ika to switch between ground and ceiling to walk on, collecting time boxes and avoid obstacles. Going to it each time is, quite honestly, the most fun I've ever had in a Crash stage. And as for the ending, while it doesn't involve Ika Ika, it still has something which I find pretty interesting in my opinion, which is that if you manage to prepare some Aku Aku masks before this section, you are rewarded with some constant, uninterrupted slide spin toward victory, with enemies and obstacles never standing a chance against you. Both of these parts are seriously great, but it doesn't mean that everything in between is not amazing, because it is. Like, going back to Ika Ika again, the way this level integrates his gimmick works so well, by swifting through the level and flipping gravities like a badass. Again, this shit never gets old. But even without him, the level is still great, by generally having some great flow and some fun movements. This level also includes some rail grinding, which is not that bad. Yeah, there may be plenty of them, but not only are they pretty brief, but are also busy with nitro boxes to dodge and time boxes to collect. This stage has, no joke, the best usage for rail grinding I've ever seen in my opinion. They're all pretty short, but sweet. Something I wish more stages would inspire from, or make them better in general. That would also be great. So for the issues I do have for Out of Lunch, honestly, they're basically so minor that it's not worth bringing up. But I'll do so anyway. There's this part in the beginning, which has this gas moxie guard near that nitro box, and hitting him without exploiting that nitro box can be a complete guesswork. Either he does hit it and you take damage, or he doesn't at all. It's complete random.
What the fuck is this shit?
There are also some occasional moments of you having to wait, like the numerous elevators or the timeline transitions. These moments do somewhat slow down the pacing in an otherwise amazing level. And amazing it is. Oh my god. Out for Lunch is one of my personal favorite levels in this game, and something which I always look forward to, from its great usage of Ika Ika to its amazing and fun level design that also includes the best implementation of rail grinding I've ever seen. Overall, I freaking adore this level, and it's not just because of its theme. Kinda, maybe, okay, it's a bit of that, but the gameplay's still freaking good. No Way Out. This level is pure insanity. I'm telling you, it contains the most constant, high-octane runs you'll ever experience, and I love it! One thing that makes it exhilarating is the beginning. Oh my god. Not only do you need to carefully slide spin toward these crumbling bridges, but also deal with a gauntlet of a 2D section afterwards. And let me tell you, this is the best 2D section I have the pleasure of experiencing. It has everything, from its fun traversal with the use of jump and spins, to Kapuna Wa being used to slow down enemies, delaying TNT explosions, and prevent elevational changes to the weighted platforms. All of this while being blazingly fast thanks to the ice physics. This section alone is some of the most intense and exhilarating moments I have ever experienced, and I never get tired of it.
Or is it?
But thankfully, everything else afterwards is also amazing. Tons of opportunities for tactical movements everywhere. I especially like some of the 3D areas, having a lot of open range for you to experiment, while also finding quick and efficient way to collect time boxes and not dip towards the freezing water. Fuck you! There are also these ball and chunk devices you occasionally see, which requires you to use Kapuna Wa to platform your way through. These parts actually take some bit of skill to manage, as the better you time Kapuna Wa's ability, the less time you'll be waiting for these platforms.
It's as if a bus leaves the end of each level every 21 frames.
Honestly, Kapuna Wa in general is utilized so well that I feel she's at her absolute best in my opinion. In terms of any issue that I have for Snow Way Out, structurally, I have no problems with it at all. Everything all works so well, just as God intended. However, when I say that it's the most adrenaline-fueled level, well, that could be a bit of a problem, as in my experience, speedrunning this level for long periods of time can be mentally exhausting, especially when going for those purple relics. I recommend taking some occasional breaks if you plan to run this level. But really, that's all the negatives I have to say. Everything about Snow Way Out is just beautiful, from its high-octane gameplay to its amazing level design that handles movement, ice physics, and Kapuna Wa very well. Some might find this daunting for its intensity alone, but I find it extremely commendable for how well this stage plays out. give it a spin. So compared to other stages I cover, there isn't a whole lot to say about this one, but the reason why I rank it so goddamn high is one word: Akano. Yeah, I'm telling you, man, doing the triple Akano trick is the best thing to come out from this game. It's so much fun to pull off.
It's like a drug, I cannot quit.
And Give It a Spin showcases this the best.
I'm the best.
Same goes with just being the best Akano stage overall, which is appropriate since this is your first introduction to him, which is a theme that I'm starting to notice with Quantum Mask, each having their first level demonstrating their absolute best. Except for Lanny. Sorry Lanny. The reason why Give It a Spin is the best Akano stage is simply because of how often you'll be using him, and how open it is to experiment with his abilities, turning to a death tornado to soar through long gaps, hover over bottomless pits, or navigate through tight corridors. It's also the perfect stage to practice the triple Akano trick, as Akano appears right at the start, in addition to the area being pretty open. Okay, look, I'm not saying that the triple Akano trick is required to get the purple relic, but rather, learning how to do it is so worth it. Not only to shave off so much time, but to also have the most fun out of it. But this isn't to say that the on-foot sections are nothing to write home about. They're pretty great too, having some fast-paced moments that utilizes your quick movements. Although, the occasional waiting for some cycles like those lily pad mimics can slow down just a teeny tiny bit, but not too bad. But yeah, nothing more to say other than that. Akano's awesome, and so is this level. Cortex Castle. So you knew this one's coming, and I don't blame you. It's the closest we've gotten to a Kaizo level in a Crash Bandicoot game. Seriously, it's one of the hardest levels in the game, and even more so when going for the purple relic. The number of attempts I need to get a slightest hint of finishing the level is insane. I struggle to even get past Lanny's section. There's just so much to learn and improve upon. But that's what makes this level so amazing, because slowly but surely, you'll get a hang of going to each section, and eventually, you'll be reaching that goal in no time. The amount of trial error you'll need to get any form of relic is already commendable enough, but getting a purple relic out of it? Man, you just become a true god at this point. Cortex Castle's level design is essentially a masterpiece, with the biggest thing it has going for is having all the Quantum Mask appear in the stage, similar to Food Run. But comparing the two, I think this level handled this gimmick even better.
Whatever, fuck this bullshit.
So going to each one of them, first off is Lanny Lully. His section consists of constantly shifting platform to walk over and laser barriers to pass through. I find it very hectic, fun, and better implemented than Food Run in my opinion. I even like this shortcut that I would soon discover. It's pretty cool. Second is Kupuna Wa. You mainly use her to slow down these spinny discs with spikes on them, all of which can be jumped over, if you're careful enough. The cycles for these spikes can be a bit inconsistent from my experience, but it can be circumvented easily if you can quickly adjust to it, which I clearly can. Next up is Akano. Unfortunately, there's not that many opportunities to pull the triple Akano trick, as the level design is a bit tight and awkward to do so. But I still like this section, as it has a nice rhythm to it when you get the groove. TNT, Kano, double jump, crash, repeat. TNT, Kano, double jump, crash, repeat. Groovy. Afterwards, we get to Ika Ika. His section is simply amazing. The first part involves this vertical level design where you're supposed to ride through this moving platform. It's actually possible to just skip it entirely with some careful maneuvering. The second part involves a spinning saws similar to Kupuna Wa's section. Normally, I would say to be careful when navigating this section with Ika Ika, but this is where Aku Aku comes into play. See, getting triple mask is necessary for this level, as it allows you to safely go through these spinning saws while being able to ride them like whee! Which, okay, this level is already hard enough as is, but man, having to collect these masks without taking a hit is a whole nother level of difficulty. But it's something I find better handled than Nitro Processing in my opinion, as less bullshit. Though, about these triple masks, Remember how in Crash Landed, there was this triple mask chaining? Well, this level has it as well. However, what makes this one better is that you are guaranteed to get that second invulnerability thanks to the cutscene breaking you out of your previous invisibility, along with having the second mask just right up ahead. This means that you will never be waiting for that vulnerability, which is great. So up to this point, it sounded like the Quantum Mask were a mix between being better or worse than Food Run, but holy shit, the last section really elevates them to have become the best section in the entire game, hell, maybe even the whole franchise. It's essentially a gauntlet that expects you to switch through all the Quantum Masks in rapid successions. I swear, it's what I mean by just playing like a Kaizo level. It's full of quick reaction, while not shying away from allowing shortcuts, example like this, or this. So everything I just told you is how the level is laid out in the nutshell. It's so freaking difficult, yet insanely enjoyable at the same time. There's almost very little that interrupts your flow. The only issue that could be brought in contention is that long commitment that I mentioned in the beginning. Its crazy difficulty means that you need to practice a lot to reach that goal without fail. And for some, it's something that are not up for that challenge, and that's completely understandable. But otherwise, Cortex Castle is a masterpiece of a level, but somehow, there's just only one that could top this one, and I'm not sure you'll be ready for it. Hit the road, Jack. Here it is, the #1 best time trial stage in the entire game. Okay, this might be controversial, putting this level above the all-masterful Cortex Castle, but hear me out, okay? Let me explain why Hit the Road is extraordinary in the first place. First off, this has to be one of the greatest flowing stage in Crash 4. Yes, I am aware that I already gave that title to stages like Snowing Out and Cortex Castle. However, I also had issue with them either being exhausting or requiring too much commitment, but Hit the Road? Nope. The intensity is balanced just right that I could be grinding for this level for hours on end and never get tired. And all of that great flow is thanks to the beginning. You start out by doing some impressively fluid movement, like slide spinning over the gaps, hitting that buzzsaw enemy without getting hit yourself, and trying to break those crates like you're playing Super Mario Bros. I just love how much rhythm there is to it, and the rest throughout. But with great flow comes with great movement, as after the beginning, you could pretty much slide spin all day long, with very little interruption. And it's not like it's just a long straight line or something, like in Sanity Peak. No, it's full of winding hallways and plenty of obstacles to avoid. The level is designed in such a way to never stop you, even with inconsistent cycles like the flame box or swinging maces. But after all that madness, we then go to the indoor portion of the level, where you'll be navigating through swinging ropes and moving platforms. For the swinging ropes, while they can also be inconsistent with their cycles, the fact that the distance between platforms is not far off means they can easily be jumped over. But when we talk about the moving platforms, things get interesting. As while most have you waiting for them to ascend, the fact that there's enough interactivity outside to collect time boxes means that you'll never be waiting there like a sitting duck. Or like, sitting Bandicoot? In fact, for the last moving platform, you can do a combination of the ground slant trick and using Lanny Lolly to give you more waiting for that moving platform, and that shit's amazing. But speaking of Lanny, he appears in this level too, but how he's handled is pretty serviceable. Besides that amazing trick I mentioned, you're pretty much just making platforms appear or the flames disappear. That's it. But after going downward from the moving conveyors and then across, you then reach to the Atmosphere. That's weird. Wasn't there supposed to be a trick? Oh my goodness! So I briefly touched upon the Atmosphere all the way back in Truck Stop. And while I say it was fine, there's actually one additional point, which, in hindsight, makes it really good. So while the Atmosphere has a constant max speed just like any other vehicle levels, there are some obstacles which can slow you down, like those puddles or the barbed wires. So there's a bit of skill in time trial to not only make sure you don't die from those TNT or nitros,
Are you stupid?
but also makes precise movements so you don't slow yourself down, which is crucial for getting that purple relic. Fuck, this level's amazing! Now that we discussed the level's content, let's bring back to the original question that I brought in the first place. Why is it better than Cortex Castle? Well, you see, while both are insanely fun in their own rights, Hit the Road is better for just how easy it is to hop in and play. In comparison, Cortex Castle takes a lot of grinding and practice to have the most fun out of it, even with having a masterful level design. This is mainly the reason why it's being outranked. But don't get me wrong, objectively, Cortex Castle is a better stage overall. But my heart still goes to Hit the Road for being more accessible. And not everyone is going to agree with this, I get it. But whatever it is, congratulations to Hit the Road for being the #1 best stage for Purple Relics, for your highly addicting mechanics, immaculate level design, and overall being a perfect stage to hop in and play. Hats off to you, sir. So we have finally reached to the end of the video. But before we conclude it, let's look back on all the levels we journeyed throughout by ranking all the dimensions. Yes, a ranking within a ranking. Very fun. So what I'll essentially be doing for the rest of the video is comparing every dimension in the game and see which one contained the best set of levels. For attaining the purple relic, of course. But how am I going to do that, you may ask? Simple. I'll be scoring each of their contained levels based on their placement in my purple relic ranking. Subtracted by 39, average all out the levels, and we get ourselves a score for that dimension. And that score will be the determining factor of the dimension's quality. The bigger the number, the better. Got it? Alright, let's do this. So to start off this ranking, we actually got a tie for this one.
Stop the cap.
First is Salty Wharf with 12.25 points. This dimension contains levels which are okay, but have some inherent flaws with each one of them that makes it overall disappointing. From Booty Call being a generally good level, but having an annoying grind rail section, which kickstarts my hatred for them. So hated in fact, that its timeline counterpart is far superior, just because it skips rail grinding completely, leaving that great second half of the stage, plus a good Dingle Dal section too. As for everything else, well, Hook Line Sinker is an alright Tana level, although quite linear in my liking. And Jetboard Jetty, well, fuck that beginning, so yeah, a mixed bag of a dimension if you ask me. But I kinda feel bad for having it ranked this low, because the potential it has can be great. But as for the second dimension tied to last, well, let's just say I don't feel bad for it at all. Agapus Dimension with 12.25 points. And yeah, the only reason it's not absolute last is because of how Dino Dash carries this dimension. But I'm sorry man, you can't just polish a turd with this one, as every other level in this dimension is fucking trash. Both Rock Block and Fossil Field being some of the worst levels in the entire game. And while Blast of the Past can be fun, it has so many long and tedious grind rail sections, it makes Booty Call jealous. What an absolute joke of a dimension. And you know what? I even go as far as to put this lower than Salty Wharf because of how much I despise it. Moving on from that dimension, we next have Mosquito Marsh with 13 points. Unfortunately, I find this dimension to be the most boring in my opinion, with the exception of Offbeat, which is both amazing and an exciting level thanks to its pizzazz. Every other level is not interesting the slightest, just like a swamp. Firstly, we have It Bayou, which has a fun jetboard sections, but contains a slew of uninteresting gameplay moments, including that goddamn boat section, something which unfortunately persists in no Dillo Dallying, although the Dingle Dal section is fairly good. And lastly, we have Home Cooking, which is an okay Dingle Dal level, but lacks the shortcuts and exciting moment to make it great, something which no Dillo Dallying provides. And they're both in the same dimension! How embarrassing! So regardless of how amazing Offbeat is, Mosquito Marsh is quite a nothing burger. But that burger is sure making me hungry, because it is time to move on to the snack dimension, which has 13.3333. Talk about a level carrying a whole dimension. God damn! This placement is heavily skewed due to not only having just 3 levels, but also because one of these levels is really great. Food Run. This level is amazing and wholeheartedly deserved to be my top 10. However, the other 2 levels, well, let's just say they should remain the trash alongside Agapa's dimension. Yikes. So if it weren't for that one amazing level, this dimension would have been placed very last in the list. But oh well, it is what it is. But getting away from all that stinker, next we have Hazardous Waste with 21 points. I feel it makes sense for it to be here. Besides having the best level in the entire game with Hit the Road, the other levels it provides, they're okay. From a real grind having some great Lenny Lolly usage, but suffering from long grind rail sequences, to Truck Stop being a whatever tunnel level that's pretty short all things considered. At least Crash Compactor is overall a great stage that allows for some great movement techs. Overall, Hazardous Waste, it's okay. I still love ya, Hit the Road. After that is a dimension neighboring Hazardous Waste with Insanity Island. Okay, this dimension is also cheating a bit by only having 2 levels, but the fact that those 2 levels are awesome really does say something about the overall consistency of the dimension, with Rude Awakening being a fantastic starting level to get a good grip of Crash 4's advanced movement, along with being a hard purple rug to get in the first place. We also have Insanity Peak, which is a great level that's a bit on the easier side, and not even as crazy as Rude Awakening itself. But overall, Insanity Island has such a great duology of levels. So the next 2 dimensions in the list are also a tie surprisingly, with 23 points. But unlike our previous tied contender, both of these dimensions are fucking amazing. First is 11th dimension. We actually have an opposite situation with this one, as unlike Agapa's dimension, this one contains one terrible level that brings the overall score down a little, with Building Bridges. And man, what an annoying tunnel level, having a bunch of inconsistent cycles across the board, make me sick to my stomach. But thankfully, all the other levels in this dimension are spectacular, with the biggest factor being all the ice physics. In one way or another, this gimmick makes the gameplay of these levels much more enjoyable, due to making you blistering fast. But it isn't to say that there's nothing else great about each one of them. For example, Snow Way Out is a masterclass of a level, by having a combination of that icy gameplay, but also intense gameplay and great Kapunawa usage, making it one of the most fun and hectic levels in the game. Stay Frosty is also in the same league as well, just with less hectic part in it, but still great nonetheless. Bears Repeating is also a fun level that can be quite difficult at times due to the uneven platforms and the polar section. And that polar section, let me tell you, it's something you'll really need to master in order to get good relic times. Lastly, we have Shift Happens. And while this technically doesn't have any kind of ice physics, I'll still compliment it for containing the best Cortex level in the entire game, as it demonstrates his potential perfectly. All in all, the 11th dimension is such a fantastic location that's hindered a bit with that one terrible level. But going to our second tied entry, we have Cortex Island. This dimension has, all around, a great selection of levels. Even with its weakest level, Seeing Double, find its way to bring something unique, like that laser barrier trick during the middle, and also the overall great level design. Only wish he controls better. As for the other levels, both Nitro Processing and Cortex Castle are 2 fantastic levels that deserve their placement in the ranking. And while I don't particularly like Toxic Tunnels, I'll still appreciate the challenging difficulty and the fun level design it offers. So yeah, Cortex Island, really freaking great. As for which one I place it higher, I will definitely put the 11th dimension, simply because I find its levels a lot more interesting. And also because of all the fun ice physics. Sorry, I can't help myself. So now we are on to our final 2 dimensions, both of which I consider them to be the greatest in the whole game. The first one being Tranquility Falls with 25.75 points. And man, this dimension is a freaking masterpiece. Not only does it contain the best Akano stage with Give It a Spin, but also the best Tana level with Potion Commotion, which also includes Give It a Spin as a second half? Sign me up! We also have Off Balance, which I find simply amazing for having fast-paced level design and lots of opportunities for many shortcuts to make. Although, it is interesting to note that this dimension also includes the worst Akano stage, Draggin On, which, okay, in hindsight, it's not that bad, but those vertical level design with Akano does hurt it a little in the end, so maybe I'm still okay with saying that's the worst Akano stage. But whatever, I still fucking love what this dimension has to offer. So freaking great! But notice that this is the second best dimension in the game. The number one best dimension we have is no surprise. It's Bermudulus Orbit. Yup, with a whopping 28 points, this dimension is simply the best by having some of the greatest levels in Crash 4. Hell, the fact that 3 out of 4 stages are in my top 10 is a testament for how masterful this dimension is packing with. We have Out of Lunch being a personal favorite of mine for having exquisite level design, to Stowing Away being a narrow yet insanely fun level thanks to Crash's advanced moveset, and Crash Landed being a beauty of a level with great usage of vehicle sections and pink goo, acting like ice physics.
Alright, I get it!
The only weak level in this dimension is Shipping Error, which, yeah, it's a Cortex level which has an occasional moment that makes you feel miserable, but occasionally getting a good run out of it is all the more satisfying. And all of this is neatly wrapped onto a galactic themed bow, making it what's ultimately the best dimension in Crash 4. Now that we're done with all this ranking, let's go ahead and transition to the actual conclusion to the video. So that does it for the entire video. Jeez, I was not expecting for this to be a huge project, let alone being my first video which involves any form of discussion. But in any case, I had a lot of fun making it, experiencing the journey of going through all the shit this game has, while also looking at some of the truly amazing levels. And all of this within the realm of time trials, something that's not the main course of this game. However, I adore these type of content in games, and always like to discuss my experience with them. So there's no doubt that I will continue to make these videos, especially when planning to go over Platinum Relics and other Crash games. And that's all I have to really say. I hope you enjoyed this video, and look forward to what I have in store for the future.